Hello and welcome to Website Performance with Varnish, Redis, and New Relic. In this workshop, we're going to be taking a look at what Pantheon does to help make sure that your website is running fast, some best practices that you can follow to make sure that you're doing everything you can to make your website run fast, and then some debugging tools and things like New Relic, a tool that you can use to monitor your performance over time. Before we get into that, though, let's do a quick introduction. Hello, my name is David Needham. I'm a developer advocate at Pantheon. I spend most of my time at Pantheon running our training team. So I spend a lot of time working on new training material, new workshops, new formats for training. So at the end, I'm going to be asking you for feedback because I desperately want to improve this training and the other trainings. I want everyone who takes these workshops, who takes the 30 minutes out of their day to attend one of these, to feel like they're getting value out of it. So if there's anything throughout the workshop that you feel like just wasn't all that valuable, or there's something that could have been better, or we'd like to go into more detail about something, well, first of all, if you want to go into more detail, please do just leave a comment. Anywhere that you are, you can leave a comment and I'll see that and can go into more detail. But also leave feedback at the very end when I prompt you for that, because that will be extremely valuable. Now, we are currently doing this live on Zoom. We also have some live streams open up on YouTube and on Facebook. So no matter where you are, if you have any questions throughout the workshop today, don't hesitate to leave a comment. It'll help us to see the question. I mean, it'll come up right away on my screen so I can see it and I can respond to that. This gives you an opportunity to make the most out of the workshop here today by really tailoring this workshop to what you need. So making sure that we cover the topics that are most important to you and answering the questions that you have coming into the workshop today. So don't hesitate at any point, jump on in and ask a question. Now, this is live workshop number 4, but we do other live workshops every week. We do the Getting Started with Pantheon, where we go through the basics, and then we have other topical introductions to some of our other tools, such as Terminus and Quicksilver, and then some going live best practices. If any of these are interesting to you, definitely check out our page to sign up. You just go to pantheon.io/live-workshops, and you'll get information there to register. You can also watch pre-recorded versions of some of these workshops on there. So if you prefer a sort of at your own pace version, you can absolutely do that there as well. Now, Pantheon is a website operations platform, and at a high level, WebOps streamlines how work gets done through agile tools and processes. Of course, this comes down to also performance. Performance is a pretty big deal to getting the most out of your website and through ultimately accomplishing whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish with your website. So that's why it is so important. Now, Varnish caching is potentially the most important piece of this. If you have caching enabled on your website, and if there's no plugin or module or customization that is causing the cache to become invalid, then your website is being saved in the global CDN. It's being saved out in the wild, thanks to Pantheon and our partnership with Fastly. We're using Varnish under the hood to save a static version of your website in the global CDN. So this is 65 points of presence all over the world. And this version of your website is being served up in a way that is super duper fast. So no matter where you are in the world, it can load up quickly because it is geographically close to wherever you are, wherever your customers are. Now, this may not seem like a whole lot, but it can shave milliseconds off of every load time just by being physically closer to the place where the data is being stored. And every website request is made up of hundreds or thousands of transactions, little micro transactions back and forth, asking for an image, asking for a JavaScript file, asking for whatever it is that you're wanting to do. And as a result, those little milliseconds add up over time, and it can result in a pretty big gain. So being close to where your people are is a big deal. And because of Varnish, because of the way that this is saved, reverse proxy cache, it's being saved in a way that is really, really solid and fast. So when we rolled out this feature a few years ago, we also rolled out HTTPS. So your website's able to leverage a secure certificate. So you always get that HTTPS. It's included with every website and every tier, even the environments. It's not your live environment. So it's all included and it's just automatic. Now, there are some things worth noting about Varnish. It is a full page cache. It does cache your entire output, which means you can continue to use things like a decoupled website, for example. You can have API calls that come in and talk to your website, even though it's going through Varnish, and that's totally fine. But it does abide by the headers. If you're having problems with cache, or trying to debug a problem, it's always a good idea to take a look at your headers by opening up Google Chrome Inspector, go to the performance tab or the network tab, click on your website, you'll get the header information from there, and you can see pretty quickly if your headers, if your cache is being disabled or something. We'll take a look at a way to do this from your command line in just a moment as well. But it's definitely worth noting it can be busted by cookies. And there are a lot of cookie naming conventions that can result in your cache being busted. Basically, your cache isn't functioning because a plugin or a module is saying, don't cache this page. So it's worth noting that some of these exist. And this is another thing that you can pull up through your Google Chrome inspector to get more information about what cookies are actually being saved on the page. So it's another pretty common issue. If you're having problems with your cache on Pantheon or anywhere, go and check to make sure that you don't have cookies in place that could be breaking it. Now, with regards to your headers, you can always go to your command line interface, type in a curl-I, and then the URL to your website. In this case, the thing that you want to look for is age. In this case, looking at the screen, the age is 0, which is bad. If the age is 0, it means that the cache is not aging. It's not getting older, which means the cache is not actually being saved. You should be able to run this command multiple times and actually see the age increase. The number will get larger over time. Whenever the cache clears, that'll get reset, but you'll always have an age that's greater than 0. So age 0 means something is not working, and you have to jump in and start debugging that. Now, we do have some docs. We have some places you can start looking, some tools to jump in and debug that. And I'll be providing links to those things at the very end if you would like to get more help with that. Now, one of our features that you can definitely take advantage of that could help with performance is Pantheon Advanced Page Cache. It's free. There's no cost to it. You just have to implement it on your website by grabbing the plugin or the module, put it in, install it. There might be some additional configuration that you can do, and all that information is on the page itself. What this does is integrate your website directly with our global CDN so that it's able to track what pages your content appears on. The reason why this is important is because if you roll out a blog post and there's a typo, the only way that you can get that typo to kind of be fixed across the entire website is to clear the cache. And so if you go and you click the button to clear the cache, either in the Pantheon dashboard or directly on your Drupal site or whatever, it's doing sort of the nuclear option, right? It's clearing the cache across the entire website, which on larger websites or websites with lots of content can be a pretty big performance hit. It's not the end of the world, but it's still something you want to avoid if possible. And especially if you're doing lots of content like this at once, or lots of stuff all the time, it can be pretty disruptive to have that going on. Well, by being aware of what pages content appears on, the global CDN is able to automatically selectively clear the cache on only the pages that require it. So this means if your blog post that had the typo appears on the front page, but then also the blogs page and maybe the author's bio page, we could selectively clear the cache on just those 3 pages and not worry about the other 1,500 or however many pages you might have on your website. This means that everyone will be able to leverage a longer cache lifetime on those pages, and only the pages that have to get updated will get updated. And all this stuff happens automatically. Once you add the plugin, add the module, configure it according to what it says, but there's not really that much to do after that. It just kind of happens automatically. Now, a different type of caching is the object cache, and this is primarily for your logged in users or for making the process of regenerating your cache a little bit snappier. Because the anonymous traffic, people that are visiting your site but not logged in, are able to leverage Varnish, the global CDN, and all that stuff. But as soon as you need to log into the website, you're not able to use Varnish. You have to reach out and touch the basically the container that's running your website over on Pantheon. You have to log in. There's database queries that are happening, and Varnish is not able to handle that. Well, under the hood, Object Cache, and specifically Redis is the tool that we're using for this, kind of sits between PHP and your database so that it's able to monitor the database queries that are being requested and the responses to those and save those in memory, which means the next time that request is made, it's able to serve it up much, much faster from memory versus doing another query. And then anytime there's a change, the response to the query, it's able to detect that and update itself all under the hood without you having to do anything. And this is another one of those features where you kind of just install it, you kind of enable it, and there's not really anything that you need to do with it after that. It just kind of takes care of itself. Now, there are some cases where you might need to debug. You can get the Redis CLI, command line interface, if you need to jump in and do additional stuff with Redis. But my personal experience has been that there's not a lot that you need to do most of the time. Of course, your mileage may vary. All right, so another thing that's worth noting is New Relic. So New Relic APM Pro is what you get with Pantheon, with any site, like even the free tier, the sandbox tier, you get access to New Relic APM Pro all for free. So you don't have to pay anything. We leverage our partnership with New Relic to give you this insight into performance data for your site. So you open up New Relic, you get New Relic APM, which stands for Application Performance Monitoring, because it's monitoring the performance of the application container itself, of Pantheon, basically. So it's not looking at your anonymous traffic. It's not looking at people that are just visiting your site and getting served the cache. It's looking at the people that are making it through the cache and reaching your website to look at how long does it take for Pantheon to respond to a request? How long does it take to process that database query and that external API that you're calling and that whatever to actually generate the page for people to view? And so this is, of course, good for tracking, just in general, like how is your logged in traffic going? But also, it's natural for the cache to expire over time and that has to be regenerated. And so those pages that have a lot of load, that require a lot of database queries to regenerate the cache, can still result in slow performance for your end users, even if they're not logged in. So for that reason, it can be a little bit complicated, but it's good to think about New Relic as a diagnostics tool. You can use New Relic to take a look at exactly what's happening, what processes are running under the hood, what functions, what database queries are kind of responsible for your website. And it can give you a good idea of where to look to make sure that things are configured the way they need to be configured, you're not missing anything. And it doesn't point you to the answer necessarily, not usually, but it can give you an idea of like, oh, I should go check out this module because for some reason it's not doing this thing I thought it was doing, or it's making these calls somewhere else I wasn't expecting. Or you can say, oh, wow, I really need to look at that Drupal view, or I need to look at that WordPress API call or something. And why is it doing that? Why is that responsible for, half of my page load? Those are ideas that you can get just by looking at New Relic. But on the whole, we're trying to answer the question of like, how fast does your website respond to a request? And it breaks up that information in a ton of different ways. So you can see like PHP, MySQL, Redis, all that information is stacked here on the graph for you, so you can see how it changes over time. There's also really fine controls over time, kind of the context of what you're viewing. So you can see a wide range of data or zoom directly into a specific issue and see exactly what happened there. Now we're going to highlight this graph here at the upper right, the Aptx Score. Specifically, the Aptx Score is a measure of how satisfied people are with your speed. And it measures this based on a scale of 0 to 1. So we tell New Relic what a normal response time should be. So this is up to us to define a threshold, basically. And then each response after that is scored, and we get notified if the score is below whatever threshold we define. Based on how the score goes, there are additional checks that can happen. You might see an incident, sort of a peach-colored background on the graph to show that, oh, wow, suddenly things are not going as quickly as we think they should be. So here's an incident. And then we also get what they call a transaction trace. And a transaction trace is really powerful because it tells you, it kind of gives you insight into what functions, what part of the website, what part of a request is responsible for taking so long. And so it can go down and drill and show you like, let's get really granular about why is it running so slowly. Like I said, it's debugging, or it's a diagnostics tool. It's not going to tell you exactly what the problem is, but you can usually get a pretty good idea by taking a look at that. But again, the most important thing is setting that threshold. When you create a site on Pantheon, I think this is a default for any New Relic integration, but the default is 0.5 seconds. And this isn't your like how long it takes your website to load when you type it into your browser. This is how long it takes Pantheon, the server, the container, to respond to a request. And so 0.5 seconds might be okay. I mean, it might be fine like for a very simple website, But in most cases, it's going to be more. For a very simple WordPress website, maybe it's less. It just really depends on what you have going on. But regardless, if you don't change your threshold, it's probably not accurate, which means your Aptx score is not accurate, which means you're either getting too many reports, too many alerts because things are always going wrong, it thinks, or you're not getting enough alerts. You're not getting highlighted, notified when something is not going so well. And so it's important, you can go down to the sidebar on the very bottom, it says settings, application. From there, you can set your Aptx, which is just the threshold. It's your average response time of the application container. And you can get that information just by looking at the graph back on the other page, see what the baseline is, what's normal, and then say, that number is the threshold. And then you'll have much better information going forward. Now, when there is an incident, you'll get this, like I said, peach colored background. You can also set up alerts to track or to notify you in different ways if you prefer Slack versus SMS versus email or whatever it might be. You can configure all of that. And then that transaction trace, as I said, will give you additional detail about what might be going on. Now, in addition to New Relic APM, we also give you access to the basics here of New Relic Browser, which you can find in the next tab over. New Relic Browser gives you front-end performance. So whereas APM is just looking at the application response time, that's Pantheon responding to a request, Browser gives you the front-end response time. How long does it actually take your website to load when you visit it in a browser itself? And so you can see, like looking at this graph, the majority of the information there is made up of the page rendering and the DOM processing. This is all the HTML and JavaScript and those things that are happening. The web application, that purple sort of color at the bottom, is basically what we see in APM. That's Pantheon's response. So this gives you a bunch of ideas of things you can start working on to make your website more performant, faster, more efficient yourself. And that information gets broken out in a number of different ways on the sidebar as well. Now, another tab that we can speak about on here is the next one over, New Relic Synthetics. Synthetics is able to give you sort of like a superpowered ping test. You can see how well your website is performing from locations all over the world. So you set up your target market, so you can set up kind of sampling of places from all over the world, and you'll get notified or can get alerts if things are not pinging super well from that location. This can also be used to get information about like uptime monitoring. If you want to make sure that your website is up and you want to get notified as soon as it goes down, setting up an alert using synthetics based on just a ping of your website can be a very easy way to do that. And then besides these, there are a bunch of other tools that New Relic can provide, and their interface is always changing. Honestly, our slides are a little bit out of date because they updated their interface. It looks a little bit different now. We started updating our slides and they updated the interface again. So they're pretty consistently updating things. Things are moving very fast in the interface. So things may not look exactly right according to these slides or even our docs potentially, but the docs over at New Relic are very solid. So they have a great learning center, learn.newrelic.com, I believe it is, where you can go through and get all sorts of information, way more than I'm able to give you, about ways to get the most out of your website using New Relic. Now, as I said, this is available on every site. This isn't quite true. It is available on every site except for the basic tier. So it's not just performance, like it says here on the slide. It's also available on the free tier, on the sandbox tier. So it is totally valid. If you're wanting to check out performance on your site, you can migrate a site into Pantheon. You can check it out with New Relic, hit it with load test, kind of go through the usual steps. And then if you don't launch the website, it's no big deal. It doesn't cost you anything. You still get to leverage the tools. All right, so we're at the point in our time where we have about 10 minutes left. We have time for questions. I'm going to open up the Q&A. I'm going to talk about the more resources link for a little while. While I do, if you have questions, I would love for you to put them in the chat. It will help to make this a more fun and engaging presentation, but it will also hopefully help you get out of this what you're hoping to get out of it. So let me go ahead and put this link into the chat for you as well. There it is. And then, like I said, if you have any questions, now is the time. Please throw them in, and we'll be wrapping up in just a few minutes. All right, so we have on the more resources section a video, because we post the previous time that we gave this workshop. And actually, it's kind of funny because it looks like I'm wearing exactly the same shirt. as the last time I did this 1 month ago. It's kind of funny. Anyway, we keep this under rotation. It's always fresh. We do the previous time that we recorded this workshop, we put it here so that you always have access to the video. Now, we do also have the feedback link. As I said, feedback is extremely important. If there's anything we can improve about this workshop, if there's anything we can do to make it better, if there's something that you really liked, please include all that information in the feedback link because it does make a really big difference. If you want to dig deeper, if you want to debug performance issues, if you want more information about New Relic or Varnish or Redis, then all sorts of these blog posts and docs articles will help you explore that yourself. There's only so far that we can go in a 30-minute workshop, but there are lots and lots of ways to dig deeper if you care about performance and if you want to get better at it. So some of these resources here should help you do that. And then there are lots of ways you can keep learning after today. We do have a forum for this class that you could go in and ask questions to. So it's very targeted. We do also have the general forum, which is sort of Pantheon-wide, anyone can participate in. And then we have Pantheon Support if you have a Pantheon-specific problem. We have Pantheon office hours if you want a place every Wednesday to come in and ask questions to a human on a Zoom call, just like this, except you can unmute, you can talk to us directly. And then we also have additional training resources. So if you prefer to learn in guide form, so like written form versus live like this, we have those. We also have advanced training and private training available, consulting. So if any of those sound useful to you, you can always click the link there to get that information. All right, well, I don't see any questions coming through, so I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up here then. Thank you all very much for attending the workshop today. I genuinely hope it was useful for you. I hope that you were able to take something away from it that will help you with your day-to-day work. Yeah, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out at any time. We're always here. We're always happy to help out. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye.